let's give credit, which not many people talk about, is the wonderful music score by, would it be Wendy Carlos then? I believe it was Wendy Carlos because she was a man at one time.
There's a lot of Beethoven in it, too.
Yeah, well, her arrangements of the Beethoven music. She did electronic versions.
And it also was revolutionary in the sense that it took a song, an extremely famous song from another movie, Singing in the Rain, and took that and put it on its ear.
Which you elaborated on in our musical version.
But you know what's so funny about that is that when I think of that song now, I don't think of Singing in the Rain. I think of Clockwork Orange because that's an amazing achievement.
It's an amazing sequence.
Very disturbing sequence. Malcolm McDowell.
Malcolm McDowell. I was going to say Alec McDowell. Malcolm McDowell is incredible in this film.
I'd say it's probably one of the top 20 best acting performances of all time.
I would say so, yeah.
You're dealing with gangs in the near future that this film takes place in. Gangs are extremely prevalent and ultra violent, but Kubrick does a great job of not only showing that these gangs are bloodthirsty and sex-crazed, but they're also really ridiculous looking. They have the most ridiculous-looking get-ups. All of the gangs.
The bowler hats.
Well, not only the Droogs, which is the main gang we follow, but the gang that they end up fighting at the theater. They're ridiculous looking. And when they encounter the other people, and I don't know if it's just the gangs, but it's the other young people that they see either at the record store or just around the shops. But this was the thing. He touched on a little bit with 2001 that I just absolutely love about Stanley Kubrick's work is the fact that he gets one person to sit there and talk and he gets the other person to sit very still and absorb everything that they're saying as if it's a non-reaction to whatever profundities that these people are saying. And that is done so well in Clockwork Orange.
He did not want to pull it, but he said that for his family, he said that he did not want to leave England, and if something wasn't done about it, then he said that I have to leave England and I don't want to do that. So he pulled.
Which is so weird because it's like such a well-loved film in England now.
Well, the reason that's become that way is because it was taboo. Just like The Exorcist was banned in England for many years.
Thatcherite England, that whole era had something to do with it too, because you had a lot of people that like worshipped the whole Droog thing.
It's true. The punkers,
towards, like, anarchy
all the
stuff,
punkers. In fact, when I was my friend worked at a video store, there used to be a lot of British people who came into the store with a copy of The Exorcist or Clockwork Orange and asked them to do a PAL conversion because they couldn't get it in England. And they were not readily available until just recently, uncut anyway. And Texas Chainsaw Massacre was another one. There was a very big problem with that. Censorship was this is the only film that Kubrick really ever had a problem really with censorship on. Well, I take that back. We'll get into that later. But I think Clockwork Orange is an amazing achievement. Everything in this film is unique. It's been copied many, many times, but no one has ever come close. There is no film that looks and feels like Clockwork Orange.
Agreed.
No film. I mean, think about it. You know how back
even to this day.
Even to this day. Like, a perfect example is when Pulp Fiction came out. Do you remember how there was 10,000 Pulp Fiction ripoffs, like Destiny Turns on the radio? You could see immediately that was a ripoff of Pulp Fiction and go, it's just a Pulp Fiction ripoff. But when you see someone try to do a Clockwork Orange ripoff, you never saw it because Clockwork Orange's vision was so unique. And I got to say,
I think Clockwork Orange probably intimidated a lot of filmmakers too, that they didn't even want to step in.
Yeah, it's such a specific vision. It's kind of like Brazil, that you can't really.
No. Anyone can do the story.
I mean, you can make the argument that stuff like the Bronx Warriors or something like that, but that's more of a hybrid ripoff of Escape from New York and say Mad Max
and the Warriors.
Yeah, and the Warriors.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just such a unique and specific vision of Clockwork Orange. It really can't be imitated unless you completely steal it.
No, it's a perfect example. I mean, not to go on a different topic here, but. Recently, someone tried to buy Adam, I believe, I'm sorry, the director, what's his name? The one who directed Pineapple Express. Please remember.
Adam Green?
No,
Adam Green. Something Green.
David Gordon Green.
Okay, perfect. Okay, David Gordon Green bought the remake rights to Suspiria. And I think that is the dumbest thing in the world because everyone who sees Suspiria knows the Suspiria script. It is the most basic script. What made the movie was the directing, was the choices.
I will say something that if you want to try and tie Clockwork Orange in with anything, is that in the 70s, there was a lot of romantic visions of gangs with filmmakers in the 70s. Because not only you had Clockwork Orange, you had the Warriors, you had, what was it, the Wanderers, you had
Psychomania,
Lords of Flatbush,
Zombie Bikers. See, I'm taking on the Edwin role now. I'm pulling out titles of
Just
like
shut
the.
up.
Well, no, the reason
Just
the reason I mentioned that.
Would you like some wine?
Add some more!
Well, you know, the reason I mentioned that is that it shows you how unique Clockwork Orange is and why it can never be duplicated is because it is all Kubrick. It is Kubrick's genius, his id, his everything that is in that movie.
Stephen King himself very recently concedes it's a great movie.
But not of his book.
But not a good adaptation.
It's a terrible adaptation of his book, but it's a great movie, and I love it. It still
at least he's come around onto it.
I wouldn't call it a terrible adaptation.
It is.
Stephen King's main criticisms of the film were that topiary animals didn't come to life, and because when you see Jack Nicholson at the beginning, you already think he looks like a psychopath.
I know what Eddie means. I don't think he means. I think what he means is it's not an accurate. It's not a faithful adaptation.
It's not a faithful adaptation. As an adaptation of the book, it's terrible.
To Mike's point.
It's a great movie.
Because it's not a doesn't mean it's a terrible adaptation. It just means it's not faithful.
It's not a faithful adaptation.
I actually think Kubrick does something that, because I've read the book.
I have too.
And I don't think the book's. I don't. It's not my favorite Stephen King book.
You know what's so funny is that even Stephen King has noted, and I agree with. There was a story where where Kubrick was reading books. He said his assistant was reading books like you're looking for his next project. He'd read a few pages, take the book, throw it against the wall. Read again, throw it against the wall. And he said his assistant heard this for like days. Then finally, didn't hear a book drop. And the book was The Shining. And King even said, I'm shocked because the book takes about 100, 200, 300 pages to really get going. So
it takes a lot, and then there's like really just stupid Stephen Kings that Stephen King likes to do, like the whole thing with
Indian Burial Ground, stuff
Tony
like that.
is actually him in the future, psychically trying to communicate to himself as a younger kid so that he can get through this terrible situation.
Well, even though that wasn't conveyed in the film, you still got the sense that when you see The Shining, that the character of Tony, or not, I shouldn't say the character, but the persona of Tony talking through the finger is actually Danny putting forth
That's
his
why
psychic
I
ability.
actually prefer the movie to the book. It's one of the rare cases where I think the movie is better than the book.
I like them both.
Yeah, I like them.
And I think it was brilliant, not only having the kid just vocalize that. Because like you saw the miniseries. In miniseries, they had this guy appear, it was like, I'm Tony.
Be fair though, it was made for television, so of course it can't be that.
That doesn't mean shit.
But
Stephen
anyway,
King produced that.
But that's what I'm saying.
That.
I know, but still.
I really like the book, but I fucking love the movie. It is the greatest horror movie I've ever seen. That's my opinion.
It's the movie that I can watch, and I'm going to go to my last comment because we've already talked about this, but it's the movie I can still watch today.
Why?
No Patrick McGee, though, but we get Joe Turkel.
I'll say this. It's the movie that I can watch even today.
You know what? You've got The Shining.
Will you let me finish? This is the movie.
He was quoting Scatman Crothers.
I like Scatman. This is the one film that I can watch even today, even though I know the scene is going to happen, and it still scares the living shit out of me every time it comes up.
It's like when you burn a piece of toast.
All right. Well, it took Kubrick.
And it's got the greatest quote from a little boy when he goes, "Have you tried to use The Shining?" He's like, "I'm not supposed to." I love that. I'm not supposed to.
All right. R. Lee Ermey and Peter Sellers were the only two actors, to the best of my knowledge, that were ever allowed to improvise in a Kubrick film. Kubrick planned everything out. Exactly, every T was crossed, every I was dotted. He did not like improvisation. But these two guys, he loved them so much he actually allowed them to improvise. And they said R. Lee Ermey would go around the set screaming all these obscenities, and they would have a person write down the stuff because they didn't want to screw it up from take to take.
I got some more little trivia there for you.
The original actor that they got to play the person, was fired because R. Lee Ermey was just there to be the technical advisor. So R. Lee Ermey got up and made a video of himself doing all these insults, people throwing stuff at him, and Kubrick brought him in, and just immediately he said, "This is the man I got to use." What's pretty unusual, I don't know if you've seen it lately, if you look, R. Lee Ermey never moves one of his arms when he's walking throughout the entire movie because he broke his arm in an accident during the making of the film. So he only had use of one arm. He kind of looks like
there's
Bob
a lot
Dole.
of controversy about Emery and Kubrick lately about like how he thinks. What is it about?
It's about, well, we'll get into that next. That's about Eyes Wide Shut.
If you notice in the film during a lot of those outdoor scenes, it's very overcast. The skies are very gray for almost everything. There was a lot of rain during that shoot. So every time it would rain, everybody would go into their trailers, and Stanley Kubrick would invite certain actors or parts of the crew into the trailer with them to have tea, and they could. Finally, Vincent D'Onofrio asked him, "Isn't this costing you a lot? Because there's these days we can't shoot." And Stanley Kubrick says, "It's not a big deal. I own every single piece of equipment that's being used on this film, so the insurance company is actually paying me on the days that we don't shoot. So I'm making money on the days we don't shoot." I always thought that was such a cool thing.
That's pretty cool.
Like what filmmaker to this day can say, "Oh, I actually own every single piece of equipment on this shoot, so they're paying me." You don't hear that from Brett Ratner.
Well, let's get into the film.
And another thing.
But then again, a lot of people rent the equipment so they can write it off. You can't write it off if you own it.
Very true. Well, let's get into the actual film. Now, the film concerns.
So there.
The film concerns.
Shut up.
I just killed your illusion.
All right, let's get into the film, guys.
Try to
the film. Come on, I'm trying to get in here. The film concerns recruits at Paris Island and them going through a sadistic drill sergeant, played by Arlie Ermy, brilliantly, who got an Academy Award nomination and deserved it.
Maybe deserved to win too.
I think he did deserve to win. But I think that him being a real drill sergeant might have hurt his chances there.
He's actually grown to be kind of a right-wing fuck lately. Like, he shows up on Fox News.
He's also nuts. I mean, like, the guy's
psychotic.
also got a few screws loose.
Don't forget, the reason he was in the Marines was because he was arrested for like doing some really bad things, and they were told you either go to jail or you go in the Army. Or the military.
Well, the weird thing is when in the film, this has nothing to do with Kubrick. It's more like Arlie Ermy. But when he was playing the father in Dead Man Walking, it was a very nuanced, very gentle performance.
No, he turned out to be a very gifted actor.
Yeah.
Absolutely. For a guy who had no training.
But and now he's just like some kook that shows up on Fox News, and it's just kind of depressing because between that
or TV commercials playing his.
I have an Arlie Ermy doll. You know that actually shouts shouts insults. It's pretty funny.
Where'd you get that from?
They were actually selling them for a while. They called it a motivational figure, and it's like it's pretty funny. I should show it to you.
Another thing that I wanted to talk about that we didn't even touch upon is this might be the best soundtrack of all the Kubrick films, I think, because he puts music in fantastic along the same lines as what he did with Clockwork Orange. He takes these songs and puts them on their ear. Like, for instance, The Bird, Surfin' Bird.
Yeah, these are interesting choices for a Kubrick movie, too.
And also, Two Live Crew took that thing, me, love you, long time for whatever, for their
But
songs.
I just love the image of the tank going over the bones, and almost like Terminator, really, going over the wreckage of this village, and you see the smiling face of the Ho Chi Minh in Ho Chi Minh City, and you hear Surfin' Bird, which is a ridiculously surreal song in the first place, as we all Family Guy fans know.
Yeah.
But Vivian Kubrick actually selected all the music for that.
Let's go on to the next
film.
one. We really don't have much time.